Krishna. So we'll start today's session by paying our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and also seeking blessings from our Guru Maharaj. So today is a special session where we shall be revising the Bhakti Yoga section of Bhagavad Gita. We know that the first 6 chapters they fall under the Karma Yoga section. The last 6 chapters are Jnana Yoga section, while the middle 6 chapters are Bhakti Yoga section. So we have already gone through these 6 chapters. Today we'll be revising. Okay. So these are the 6 chapters: knowledge of the Absolute, attaining the Supreme, most confidential knowledge, opulence of the Absolute, universal form, and 12th chapter is devotional service. So Madhvi Radhika will take us through the 7th chapter, knowledge of the Absolute, and then
Hello.
Ashish.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ashish will take 7th and I will take 8th.
Okay. So Ashish ji will take 7 and Madhvi Radhika will take 8. Nikita ji will take the 9th chapter, which is the most confidential knowledge. And I, Sri Gauradas, will take the 10th chapter, opulence of the Absolute. And if Dr. Akshi joins, she will take the 11th chapter, the universal form. And Arpita Ven will help us revise the 12th chapter, which is devotional service. Right. So in the 7th chapter, which is titled as Knowledge of the Absolute, it starts with Krishna highlighting that the glories of his knowledge about him. And then he talks about his different energies, inferior energy, superior energy, right? Summarizing that he is source of everything. And that the aim of life is to surrender on to Lord Krishna. And then there may be a question that then why don't all surrender onto him? So he highlights that why people also worship demigods, and there are others, whose intelligence have totally been stolen. They also worship impersonal feature of absolute truth. And then finally, he highlights that how from Maya, a spiritual seeker approaches Krishna in devotion. Okay. Then the 8th chapter, attaining the Supreme. It's basically highlighting the fact that how it is so important to remember Krishna at the time of leaving this body. Basically, it is said that everything we do in our life, the aim of that is that how we can remember Krishna at the time of death. Death is said to be our final exam. Right? So the importance of remembering Krishna when we leave this body is highlighted here in this chapter. Right? Then Krishna also highlights that how Yoga Mishra Bhakt would remember, right? How a pure devotee would remember, comparison between material and spiritual world. Right? And then supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna. Right? Then the 9th, which is basically the cream of Bhagavad Gita. Many of the most important verses of Bhagavad Gita are in this 9th chapter, right? And he starts this chapter by glorifying the knowledge which he is about to reveal. Right? He shares his Aishwarya Gyan, right? That how He's source and he's creator. Because once we know that what is his position, that helps us to remember him, worship him, love him. And then again, the flow of 9th chapter is almost similar to the flow of 7th chapter, right? So again, we will see that how in this chapter, Krishna will compare different type of worshippers, spiritual seekers, who worship his universal form, who worship his personal form, right? And who basically they think that everything is one, ekvatena, right? And then finally Krishna, in the last verses of 9th chapter, he highlights the glories of Bhakti Yoga, right? With the climax of Bhagavad Gita being One Manabhav Vad Bhakto. And then Krishna continues glorifying Bhakti Yoga in the 10th chapter. He says that it is difficult for mental speculators to understand these opulences, and only a devotee can understand it. Then he highlights that again, he's source of everything, all the qualities and all the personalities have come from him. Right? And then in the 10th chapter, from verse number 8 to 11, the 4 verses are said to be Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, right? Where he highlights that his opulence, then how devotees they approach him, what do they do, and then how does he reciprocate. And thereafter, Arjun basically acknowledges what Krishna has just said. And he said that it is not only I, Arjun, who accepts these facts, but all the all the rishis, all the sages, they also accept uh, this glories, what you have just mentioned. And then he says that I want to hear more about you. I want to hear about your vibhutis. And thereafter, Krishna says that it is impossible, for anyone to understand all my vibhutis, opulences, but I will just share few of them. And he shares 82 of those opulences, primary opulences. And he says that these are but just spark of my opulences, And then Arjuna develops a desire to see Krishna's universal form, that how he is present everywhere, right? And thereafter, and we understood that how this universal form is not the eternal form, it is the temporary form, because Krishna is showing that how he is present everywhere in this material world. So when material world in itself is temporary, universal form is also temporary. And thereafter, Krishna shows his universal form, and Sanjay describes, and then Arjuna also sees and he speaks out that what I am seeing, thousands of head, thousands of mouth, and how he's also seeing the Kal Rupa of Krishna. And then he becomes horrified, seeing that Drona, Bhishma, Karna all going in his mouth. He says, Krishna, I'm really afraid. Can you please show me your forehand form and the Sham Sundar form, right? And thereafter, Arjuna glorifies Krishna. And then finally, Krishna says that only a pure devotee can see me in any of these forms. It is impossible for a non-devotee to see me. Right? Seeing me is understanding also. Right? And then, after seeing the universal form and knowing the opulences, Arjuna knows that people are going to get confused, and there is going to be a lot of debate and discussion about supremacy of personal form of Krishna or the impersonal form. So, benefit of all of us, Arjun asked this question: out of the two forms, which is better? And then Krishna specifically highlights that how his personal form is supreme form, and that how it is so difficult for an impersonal worshipper to actually worship in that form. Right? And then Krishna also highlights the progressive stages of bhakti. The highest stage being always remembering Krishna with your mind and thoughts. If someone is not able to do that, then the next stage is trying, attempting to do that, Abhyas Yogi, right? Like by doing different limbs of bhakti. But if someone is not even able to do those practices of devotional services, then it is recommended by Krishna that at least we should engage in services for Krishna, right? Which is like primarily you can also say it is like Nishkam Karma, right? That you have to work for Krishna, right? Active doing services, like for example, one of that can be book distribution, right? Cleaning the temple, all those services, right? They are in that category. And then finally, if someone is not even able to do that, then it is recommended that at least do some charitable activities, right? So Krishna highlights Krishna is so merciful that somehow or the other he wants to engage everyone in his service, and he will bring everyone up gradually, right? And then he describes that what are the qualities a devotee should develop which really makes him happy, right? So Krishna describes those qualities. So in gist, these are the 6 chapters we are going to discuss today. So we'll start with the 7th chapter. Okay.
Hare Krishna Sudhu.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Yes.
So, thank you for the introduction. I will start the 7th chapter now.
You can switch on your video.
Okay. So, as Sumitji has described, the 7th chapter consists of basically 5 chapters. That is, first the Krishna glorifying glory about the Krishna, Lord Krishna. Then Krishna knowledge of the Krishna's energies. Then surrendering unto Krishna. Then talking about then demigods worship. That is the impersonal people worshipping the demigods. He would explain a bit about it. And then delusion by Maya to devotion to Krishna. So in the first shloka of the 7th chapter, the God actually, Lord Sri Krishna introduces the complete devotional services, the whole process of the devotional services. The main thing that he says in that is, basically it is to hear. First thing is Shrinu, that he talks about it is basically to hear, then completely know me completely, then all doubts are removed, then take shelter of Krishna, practice the bhakti yoga and think of Krishna. So these are the basically what do you call 6 different steps that he explains as part of the devotional services. Then then Krishna explains that he will now going to declare the complete what you call the energy, the full knowledge of Krishna, that is both his phenomena and numinous energies. That is the second shloka. And in the next shloka, he says that this knowledge is very confidential, because this is what he says, once someone becomes a devotee, he can control Krishna. But Krishna consciousness is not achieved and it is awarded. So basically, somebody who achieves it is not awarded to them, it is achieved. Sorry, it is not achieved, it is awarded to them. When I say awarded to them, basically, you are giving spiritual master, taking him with him, and basically he explaining you up, and then you're slowly progressing it out and getting into the devotional services. That following the first in the first shloka, what he said about the 6 steps, following those 6 steps rigorously, that is what, and then you are basically awarded the Krishna consciousness. Then basically Krishna talks about the earth, fire, all the basically the material energies that are there into the 4th chapter. Then he says about that there is something, there is another energy which is basically what you call exploiting all the material energies that are there, and we will go through the next chapter. The material energies are nothing but those 8 material energies, that is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and false ego. So all those basically are the what you call the material energies, and there is one more inferior energy that is basically extracting this out. That is what Krishna says. Then in the next shloka, basically he says that all these energies that is basically the wealth, there is no superior to me, or there is no truth superior to me, and everything that is resting like a pearl of a string on the thread. And then he explains. So basically what he is trying to say is that whatever I told you, the earth, water, false ego, all those things, and the inferior energy, extracting it out in the first stanza of this verse, he says. And then the next verses, he explains the things that is like from 7.8 to 11, he tells about that it is like a taste of a water, the light of the sun and the moon, then the syllables om, then he talks about the ability of the man, sound, then the original fragrance of the earth he is, heat in the fire he is, then life's he's basically in everybody's life, then all the penances that somebody does is that, then original seed of the existence, he's the intelligent, he's the most powerful man, and all those basically, yeah, also he says about the he's the strength, he is also the what you call the sex life, where it is not contrary, which is basically not contrary to the religious principles. That is what he explains in detail from chapter 8, from 7.8 to 7.11. Then in 7.12, he talks about that basically he's not under the control of any of these material natures, he's above all of these material natures. Then in 7.14, and he in 7.13 he takes about the 3 modes of goodness, that is mode of passion, mode of goodness, and mode of ignorance. These are the 3 things that he talks about it, and he says that he's above all these things again. Then in 7.14 he says that there are basically I know that it is difficult to overcome these mode of goodness, but somebody who surrenders unto me can easily come beyond this. Then in 7.15, he starts introducing about the 4 types of duskritas, that is basically 4 types of miscreants people. And those are basically grossly foolish, lowest among the mankind, knowledge is whose knowledge is stolen by the illusion and artistic nature of demons. These are the 4 people who are basically the duskritas in this case. Then among these also the 4 kinds of the devotional services unto me, people, they also come to me for the devotional services. Either they are in distress, either they desire of wealth, either they are inquisitive, or one who is searching of the knowledge of the absolute. God says otherwise. Then then he says that of these also, people who are of these also, who is always engaged in the pure services to me, he is very dear to me. Out of those 4 disciples who are there is also dearer to me. Then he says that there is basically 1 in thousands among the men, that is next about it, they will basically what you call 1 in thousands of the men will hardly know me completely. Then after many births, they will actually come to me. They will actually in the knowledge of surrender unto me. They will completely surrender unto the God, and such a great soul is very, very rare to find on the earth. Then following that, he says that there are sakam bhaktas. They are sakam bhaktas. If they worship the deities, they remove all the distress and fulfill their desires. That is that. And in the next 4 shlokas, he will explain about that in detail. Basically, he says that he is in everyone's heart. So basically, he says that his intelligence has been stolen by the material desires, surrender unto the demigods. Basically, he's talking about the demigods now, who are basically the worshippers of the demigods, are basically the people who are intelligent. Intelligence has been stolen, and they desire about something or the other. They basically worship unto the demigods. Then he says that they are basically the small intelligent people, because they are looking for the fruitative and limitative desires. And those who worships the demigods goes to the planet of the demigods. My devotees ultimately, and his devotees will ultimately come to the supreme planet, that is basically Golok Vrindavan. Then basically he says that there are impersonalists who thinks that the ultimate absolute truth is impersonal. That means nothing but Krishna is impersonal, devoid of any form attributes, and that is temporary. Takes a personal form of Krishna. That is basically he's taking a personal form of Krishna, and they consider the form of activities of Krishna to be illusionary. That is Maya, and that's why we call them as Mayavadis. Then Krishna talks that and they basically think Krishna reserves the right of revealing himself. So basically, Krishna is having the right to reserve the himself. How he explains this is basically, he says that I am covered with my internal. He covers everything by his internal potency, just like a cloud. And whenever he wants to reveal it, he will reveal it, like sun reveals himself. So that is the way he is basic. And also he is unborn and infallible. Then what he says is that he knows the past as well as he knows the present, and as well as he knows the future of all the living entities, of everybody basically, but no one knows about him. And then basically who knows Krishna is basically all the living entities are born in the delusion. Basically that is what why no one knows Krishna is basically because they are born in the delusion at the beginning of the creation and bewildered by the dualities. That is dualities arising from the desires and hatred and continuing from the previous lives. That's why they know one knows Krishna. Then then basically the person who has acted piously in his previous life will of course come to Krishna. And finally Krishna says that those who in the full conscious of me, who knows me, the supreme lord, to be governing principles of the material manifestation of demigods and all the methods sacrifices, can understand to me, the supreme personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ashish ji. So, do you have any questions for others? Ashish ji. Ashish ji.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for others?
No.
Does anyone else has any question for Ashish ji? So is there any doubt from 7th chapter anyone has? Okay, so we'll go on to the 8th chapter.
Hare Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna here.
Share slides.
You want me to share?
Because
Okay. Just give me a second. Okay. So are you able to see?
yes.
Okay.
So Ashish ji just now discussed 7th chapter. So there is a link between the 7th and the 8th chapter. In the 29th shloka of the 7th chapter. You know. So Krishna says and mentions something about Brahman. Okay. He says that they are actually Brahman.
You can
Don't
come
speak
on
of-
video.
Okay. So in the 29th shloka, Krishna mentions something about Brahman. So in this chapter, Arjuna will be asking some questions about related to that. And in the 30th shloka, Krishna mentions about something at the time of death. So these are the two basic, in the 8th chapter, we'll be discussing what's the importance of time of death. Because Krishna says that who is in full consciousness of me at the time of death will surely attain me. So Krishna will now elaborate all these things in the 8th chapter. So the 8th chapter begins with some questions of Arjuna to Lord Krishna. So in first to fourth, we will discuss these questions. So the next, and in the 5th to 8th, as we have already seen this slide, Krishna discussed the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death. Then how we can remember Krishna by Yog Mish Bhakti. He explains about Sat Chakra Yoga in this. Then in contrast to that, in 14 to 16 says, Krishna says that it's easier to remember Krishna by pure bhakti instead of this Yog Mish Bhakti. And then there is some comparison between the material world and the spiritual world. And then in the last section 23 to 28, Krishna says about the supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna. After explaining all these things, he establishes that bhakti is the main thing by which we can attain Krishna. So the next slide. So these are some of the questions which Arjuna will ask in first and second shloka, and in third and fourth, Krishna will answer all these questions. So first question was like, what is Brahman? Because in 29 shloka, Krishna mentions about it. So basically, when we were going through this chapter, we discussed that what is Brahman and what is Par-Brahman. Okay, so by Brahman, we can take that we are spirit. No? Brahman can be taken as a meaning as spirit. Because we are spirit souls, we are part of Krishna. So Krishna is the whole, and so Krishna is called Par-Brahman, and we can be called as Brahman. Okay, so the Krishna answers that Jiva is the Brahman, and he is indestructible, transcendental living entity. So this is Brahman. And for himself, he says he is the Par-Brahman. Then the next question is Adhyatma. What is Adhyatma? Then Adhyatma, Krishna says that it is our own Swabhav, a nature of the living entity. And what is that nature? Is to serve Krishna, to serve Par-Brahman, the Supreme. Then he asks about karma. Then Krishna says that fruited activity of the jiva that leads to transmigration from material body to another is the karma. Whatever activities we perform in this life or in a previous life will take us and will determine our next body. Okay. Then what is Adi Bhuta? Adi Bhuta, he says, is the Prakriti. Okay. This constantly changing nature is the Adi Bhuta. And Adi Deva, he says, is the gigantic universal form. Then Adi Yagna is the Paramatma, is the Lord of the sacrifice. As Paramatma, Krishna is inside our body. So this is how Krishna answers Arjuna's questions in third and fourth. So next slide. So we just now discussed, then on what basis when we transmigrate from one body to another, what determines what body we will get in the next body? It's our own karmas as well as whatever activities we perform in this life, okay, it will determine our consciousness at the time of death. Okay, so if we are practicing bhakti throughout our life, we are preparing for exams. Like if we are not preparing for the exams throughout our school days, then at the time of exam, we might not be able to perform that well. So similarly, we have to engage in devotional services this life at every moment, then only we will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death, and that can determine our next life, whether we will be in association with Krishna in our next life, or we have to again take rebirth on this material world. Next slide. So now Krishna will highlight the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death, because this question, this was told by Krishna in the last shloka of the 7th chapter, that when one is in full consciousness of him, he can remember him at the time of death and he can attain the supreme abode. So in this also, Krishna is saying this only, that at the end of his life, if one remembers him and quits his body, then he will attain his nature. And for this, he is very sure. There is no doubt. So in this shloka, we discussed a story of Azamila. Okay, like Azamila was a Brahman initially, and then he got like degraded, and then he was in material association. But because he kept the name of his son as Narayana, and at the end of life, he could remember all his devotional practices. Like he called out Narayana to his son, but God considered him and he gave him a second chance. And in his next life, he could complete his devotional activities and go back to Godhead. So this is very important, that whatever activities we have performed in this life will definitely be rewarded at some point of our life. Okay, so next slide. In the 6th, then Krishna talks about general law of destination of death. Means that when we remember, whatever we remember at the time of death, we will attain that state. In this regard, we took an example that if somebody has done some karmas to become a cockroach, suppose he lived his life like that, that he is destined to become a cockroach in his next life. Suppose at the time of death, he remembers of some palace, suppose. So he will become a cockroach in the palace, like that. So whatever state we are at the time of living body, we will achieve that. And similarly, in this regard, we took the example of Bharat Maharaj also. Like Bharat Maharaj was like he renounced everything, he went to jungle. But somehow or the other, he got attracted to some deer. And in this life, he was able to remember only about that deer at the time of death. And he had to get this deer life in his next birth. So it proves that our destination after death definitely depends what we remember at the time of quitting our body. So next slide. So we can make an inference that when we accept our body after quitting, depending on whatever desires are stored in our mind at the time of death, and what is good or bad karma in our own account. So these two things will definitely depend, will decide what life will get after death. Next slide. Now, Krishna says that you should always think of me. He's highlighting the importance of always remembering, always thinking about Krishna. You know? And at the same time, carry out your duties. So this is for us also. It is very practical that we can continue doing our duties in whatever state we are. Like if we are in a household life, we can continue doing our duties, but the condition is that we have to think of Krishna all the time and perform a duty. Krishna is not saying you don't fight, you don't do your prescribed duties. Krishna is saying you do your duty, remembering me always. If you are able to dedicate your all activities, your mind and intelligence unto me, you will attain me. So here Krishna is telling us the formula of attaining him while doing our duties as well. Next shloka. So the same thing continues here, that if we remember Krishna always, never forgets him. So always remember Krishna, always think about Krishna, never forget him. Then at the end, we will attain him. See, so the same thing is highlighted in this. Next slide. So the same thing, we should always remember Krishna, we should never forget Krishna, and result will be that at the time of death, we will be able to remember Krishna. Otherwise, it will become very difficult. We think that no, we can remember Krishna at the time of death. We will force our mind to remember Krishna at the time of death. It's not possible. We have to practice it throughout our life. So Krishna says that to remember the personality of God at the end of the time is so important. Next. So this is the summary. Okay. Always think of Krishna and we can attain Krishna by remembrance, and what a destination, remembering Krishna. So now from 9 to 13, the next section, remembering Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So in this regard, we discussed about Yoga Mishra Bhakti. What is Yoga Mishra Bhakti? So we told that it is a bhakti which is mixed with a yoga, but the component of bhakti in it is more. Okay, it is more than 50%. We made a slide and said that in this, the component of bhakti is more. So in this, Krishna will tell us how one can attain Krishna by this, following this Yoga Mishra Bhakti also. Okay. So in the 9, Krishna says that in the 8th and 7th, he was saying that you have to think of me, you have to remember him. So in the 9th, Krishna will say how we can do that and what are the ways we can remember Krishna. Okay, what we can think of Krishna. Like Krishna is saying, think of me, but what should we think? So we can think that he is the oldest, he is the controller of this world, material and spiritual world. He is the smallest of the smallest. He is the supreme maintainer. He is inconceivable. So many things of Krishna were highlighted in this 9, through which we can remember Krishna. And then in the 10th, Krishna talks something about this Satya Chakra Yoga. It is a method, like we have to fix our life hair between the eyebrows, remember the Lord in full devotion, and that just focus on and like this. It's a practice which yogis perform when they are leaving this body. Okay, so this is a Satya Chakra Yoga. So in the 11, he says, what is the requirement of this? So he says that a person who is in learned in the Vedas, who utters Omkara, who is in renounced order, these are the prerequisite for this Satya Chakra Yoga. He should be in renounced order, he should be very learned in the Vedas, he should always utter Om, and he should practice celibacy. Then only one is eligible for performing Satya Chakra Yoga. So when we think about all these things, we can think that's so difficult in this Kali Yuga. How it's possible? Like one is very much learned in the Vedas, one is in renounced order, he's celibate. It's very difficult. So, and then in the process of Satya Yuga, it's the same thing. You have to seize all your sensual engagements. You have to fix your mind on the heart and life here at the top of head. And then at the time of death, the life here goes out of the head and you can attain liberation. So this is the process and requirements, prerequisites of the Satya Chakra Yoga. And what will be the destination after doing all these things, after following this process? So Krishna says, after being situated in this yoga practice, vibrating the Om, quits his body, thinking of me, he will attain my supreme planet. So Krishna says that through this process also one can attain the supreme planet. But in the very next section, Krishna will say that no, but bhakti is easier method. This is a difficult one. So why not go for the easier method to attain Krishna? So Kevala Bhakti is the only means by which we can attain Krishna. Okay. If we go into other processes, it might become very difficult for us to attain Krishna. So this is a very important shloka in which Krishna is using this word Satatam, Nityashah, and always, continuously, and Sulabha. Sulabha means it is the easiest part. So if one is always remembering Krishna without division of mind, then it is very easy to obtain because he is constantly engaged in devotional service. So here Krishna is highlighting the importance of Kevala Bhakti in contrast to the Yog Mishra Bhakti. So next slide. Then Krishna says, okay, if you attain my spiritual planet, if you are doing devotional service, then there will be no rebirth for you. Okay, where you will not rebirth? In this Dukhalyam. He compares this temporary material world as Dukhalyam. It is full of miseries. But one who attains Krishna, then we have not to return to this miserable world. Then in the next shloka, Krishna says, but from the highest planet to the lowest planet, like from Brahmaloka to this earthly planet, all living entities have to take rebirth, because Brahma can also not escape this. Okay, we have to take rebirth if we have done, if we are not able to remember Krishna at the time of death. But Krishna says, by Kevala Bhakti, if you are able to remember, then you will not have to take birth and you will be in association with Krishna eternally. So this is the importance of bhakti. Next slide. Krishna says that like in this we can revise what you have studied, that attaining Krishna is easier by bhakti, then we will not have to take rebirth. But in 16 there is exception. What is the exception? That this is like if we are we are pure devotees, then we will not have to take rebirth. In the next shloka, he will tell what is the thing in the 17th. So this section is now comparing about material world and spiritual world. Now in this, something about like Brahma's day calculation has been done, which we have done already, that Brahma's day, like there are 4 yugas, and then there are 1000 this Chatur yugas in one day of Brahma. Okay, so like this we calculate the life of Brahma. Is a complex calculation which we have studied before, but in this, like Krishna is highlighting that when one day of Brahma begins, all living entities are manifested. Okay, and at the night of Brahma, all living entities again becomes unmanifested. So this is temporary or partial devastation, we can say, that we become, all living entities become manifested at the beginning of the day of Brahma, and at the end of the day of Brahma, all living entities becomes unmanifested. And this cycle keeps repeating. We are helpless in this. We cannot do anything. But if we attain this eternal spiritual world, which is the unmanifested form of Krishna, unmanifest spiritual nature, that is eternal, that is transcendental, it is supreme, and it is never annihilated. Then we don't have to go through this cycle again and again. Okay. Again, Krishna highlights in 21 the same thing, that by bhakti, if you attain my abode, you will not have to take rebirth. Whatever you were saying in 16, that you don't have to take rebirth if you attain my abode, same thing is saying, that place from which having attracted never returns, that is my supreme abode. So Krishna is saying that Krishna's abode is attainable by pure bhakti. Only by unalloyed devotion we can reach his abode. And about that abode, it is unmanifested, eternal. And he says about Krishna, whatever we study in the 7th chapter, that Krishna's energies are all pervading and everything is situated in him. So whatever we studied in the 7th chapter, he's highlighting about this in the 22nd sloka. And the last section from 23rd to 28th. Now in this, we were discussing in this 8th chapter about the importance of time of death. Okay, so now Krishna is explaining that there are two times which we can leave our body. Okay, so in this they are saying that for devotees, whatever time, whatever place they leave the body, they don't bother about it, because they are always engaged in Krishna and his activities, remembering Krishna and his activities. They are not bewildered by this time of the death or place of the birth. They are sure that we are remembering Krishna and they will go to eternal spiritual world. But for the other people who are following Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Hat Yoga, for them, for people in general, they should leave their body at a particular time, okay, so that they will not have to take birth again. So with this comparison has been given in the next slide, that if for the Gyanis and Yogis, there should be an auspicious movement. It should be in the presence of light and fire. That is the sun and the fire god. And it should be during the daytime. It should be during the Shukal Paksh, that is the fortnight of waxing moon, in Uttarayan, that is the 6th month when the sun travels to north. So these are the conditions in which if these people leave the body, then they will attain the Brahm Jyoti or liberation and they will have not to return. And the other people like karmis, if they leave their life in darkness during smoke time, Krishna Paksha and in Dakshinayan, then they will reach heaven. Okay, they will reach heaven on from where they have to again return. So this is the comparison of the time of death leaving the body. So in 27th and 28th, next slide, says that devotees also know about these two paths, but they are never bewildered because they have firm faith in Krishna's bhakti. So they are always fixed in devotion. So they are not at all worried about this. In the last shlok, Krishna now establish the supremacy of this bhakti yogi. He says that whatever results one can obtain by studying the Vedas, by performing sacrifices, by undergoing austerities, charity, whatever results one may obtain, these results can simply be obtained by doing devotional activities, by knowing about Krishna, by knowing about the glories of Krishna. These results can be obtained. So, and again Krishna says, such a devotee who knows about this will attain my supreme eternal abode. So this was the summary of this chapter.
Thank you very much. So just want to check if anyone has any questions on this chapter, on the 8th chapter. Anyone has any doubt? You have any question for participants?
No.
Okay. It is important chapter where the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death is highlighted, right? And sometimes people, they give an argument that fine, if the importance is to remember Krishna at the time of death, then we will remember him at the time of death. What is the point of engaging ourselves in devotional services 24/7, 365 days in a year? Why should we do this? Why so much of headache and all? But Krishna again highlights Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu. So that is important. He says that you will only be able to remember me at the time of death if you have lived a life of Krishna consciousness. There is no shortcut to it. Right? Very important. And then finally, again, as always, and as he does everywhere, he again compares devotional service with other paths, and then brings devotional service higher, or the highest. He compares here that Jnanis and Yogis, they'll have to leave the body at a particular time point. Karmis, if they leave at a particular time point, what is the destination they achieve? But for devotees, they don't have to bother about what time of the day they have to leave, what time of the year they have to leave. Uttarayana, Dakshinayana. No, they don't have to worry. They can, the most important thing for them is to always remember Krishna. That is what they should always, right, remember. Okay, so with this we move on to the 9th chapter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so so the 9th chapter is divided into 4 parts.
You can
Where-
switch on your video.
Okay, the 9th chapter is divided into 4 parts, wherein in the first part we see Krishna glorifies the knowledge. The title of the chapter is the most confidential knowledge. So the first part of this chapter, Krishna goes through, glorifies the knowledge. The second part, we further describe, Krishna's Aishwarya Gyan, which is his relationship with this world. Then the third part, we learned about different kind of worshippers of Krishna. And then fourth part, further glories of the bhakti. So in the previous chapter, Krishna mentions about how a pure devotee, Ananya Bhaktas, fix their mind, and they don't undergo the cycle of repeated birth and death, and how they surpass this material world. So now in this chapter, Krishna explains as how how we can become such a pure devotee, which is Ananya Bhaktas. We studied that there is a grading here where Krishna reveals in initial 6 chapters a bit of confidential information where he speaks about matter and spirit, which is the Jnana. Then further, the degree increases with chapter 7 and 8, where he discloses more confidential knowledge, which was called as Guhyatara, the second level. And then in this chapter, we see that it is why is it called as the most confidential knowledge, is because it is the word Krishna uses is Guhyatama. So it is the most confidential knowledge. So where Krishna describes his Aishwarya aspect, the majestic aspect, and also the towards the end, the excellence of a pure devotee. So with that said, we could see that there's a similarity between chapter 7th and 9th. 9th is further in depth to the flow of 7th chapter, and the flow also more or less goes the same, where we start with the importance of hearing, then Krishna's different energies and different kind of worshippers, demigod versus Krishna worship, and about impersonalist. So the flow goes more or less the same, but with further details. To start with the first section of this chapter, which will be, the glories of the knowledge, which Krishna reveals. The first shloka, I think we all remember the word Anasuya Ve, which was non-envious nature. So this is highlighted by Krishna, that he is revealing this knowledge to Arjuna because Arjuna is never envious of Krishna, and further in shloka 2, Krishna describes the 8 characteristics of this knowledge of the pure bhakti. And we also further, I think we discussed this shloka in great depth, which has the 8 characteristics. Are the first one to start with is Rajavidya, where Krishna says this knowledge is the king of all knowledge. Then Rajaguhyam, it is the top secret, king of all secrets. Then Pavitram, it is the purest. Uttamam, it is, transcendental. It is the top, and then Pratyaksha Avagamam is it is experiential. We directly experience it by realization, self-realization. And then Dharmyam, it is the perfection of religion. Susukham, it gives you immense joy. And then Avyayam, means it is everlasting or eternal. So these are the 8 top characteristics which Krishna mentions about glorifying the knowledge, which is the most confidential. Now, in further shloka, on the first shloka, he mentioned how being non-envious is one of the qualifications you need to get this most confidential knowledge. In third shloka, he highlights the importance of faith, that whoever is faithful in this devotional service, they will never return to this cycle of birth and death, and they will come back to Krishna. So and we learned here on the progressive stages of bhakti. Starting the first stage itself is faith, and then followed by it was like Shraddha, then Sadhusam, which is association of devotees. And then the next step is Bhajana Kriya, which is, practicing the devotional service. So in this way, we, learned 8 stages, which was like Shraddha, Sadhusam, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhav, and which eventually leads to Prema, which is the topmost stage of bhakti. So, so that's why here I think the shloka, the key highlight is the start of this is from faith. So Krishna highlights how faith is an important factor. So this covers the glorifying section of the knowledge, confidential knowledge. Now the second section. I'll go first.
Continue.
So then, yeah, so we were into the second section. So where Krishna mentions that how, in his unmanifested form, like he's into everything, but still he is not. So we gave the example of a sunshine, that it spreads everywhere. Similarly, Krishna's energy spread everywhere, but and everything is resting, within that energy. And also, further, Krishna explains himself in further shloka of 9.6, comparing this to the wind, that just like the wind blows everywhere, but rests always into the sky. Similarly, we all created, we all living beings are resting on Krishna's energy. So overall, Krishna is explaining here that at the end of every millennium, everything destroys and annihilates and enters into him. And at the beginning of another millennium, he creates them again. And this process undergoes again and again. So it gets annihilated and then again created. So here we learned, how the creation happens when the material energy is, enters into as Mahatattva, and then how the first Purusha incarnation of Mahavishnu, enters. He lies in the causal ocean, and how with each of his breath he breathes out innumerable number of universes, and and how into each of these universes he enters in the form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and then Garbhodaksha Vishnu, then the Brahma comes out, out, and he further then manifests the Vishnu further manifests as Kshirodaksha Vishnu into each one of us, into every minute atom. So so that's how everything annihilates and then gets created. So further, we were coming to the 11th and 12th shloka, where Krishna, has a contrast where in 11th shloka, he explains how fools consider him as ordinary human because they don't know his transcendental nature and they get bewildered. So they don't, ultimately they don't get liberation. Whereas in 13th and 14th shloka, which are, I think, the center shloka of the whole Gita, he highlights the, Ananya Bhakta, how they worship constantly, they perform the devotional service constantly and who are not deluded or bewildered. And Krishna also calls them as Mahatma, great souls. And they are always engaged in devotional service. So they are always, under the protection of this divine nature. Then we switch to the three kind of worshippers, different kind of worshippers. We learned about Ekatvena and Prathakvena and Vishvato Mukham. So Ekatvena were the class of people who worship in oneness. They think themselves as Krishna, as God. Sorry, and then Prathakvena were who worship in the demigod worshippers. Those were falling in this class, and then Vishwatomukam, who worship in the universal form. Those were the three classes we further in the chapter. Now we will see that how Krishna further explains from shloka 16 to 19 on the worshippers of worshipping Krishna in his universal form, how Krishna is in various elements, and then further down he talks about demigod worshippers. So between 16 to 19, Krishna Krishna says how he's he's part of, he is the he's in every element, as in every element in all the sacrifices we do, whether it is he's mentioned in the scriptures, everything mentioned in the chanting we do. He's the mother and father of the universe. Even the syllable Om, it's with him, and all the Vedas, the creation and the annihilation, the heat and cold, all these are the elements of that of Krishna. So this is how some people worship him in universal form, where it shows that Krishna is just that all pervasive factor of Krishna, that he is in everything, and he's the cause of all causes and the ultimate shelter. Further down 20 to 25, we see the Prathakvena worshippers, which is the demigod worshippers. And Krishna clearly says here that this kind of worship is not right. It is wrong. And these kind of worshippers, they worship demigods, they go to higher planets, and then they have to take rebirth again and again in this material world. So ultimately, the destination of each of us depends on whom we worship. So with demigods, we achieve the higher planet, but we have to undergo the cycle of birth and death cycle again and again. And if we worship Krishna, we can reach back to the ultimate. So further down, Krishna, in this section, Krishna, there's an important shlok, 22nd shlok, where Krishna clearly says that those who always worship him with exclusive devotion, then he carries what they lack and he preserves what they have. So and those, comparing this to those who believe into other demigods, who still do the demigod worship with faith, but still they are not doing it the right way. And then we have learned here the example of how it is even when we worship demigod, the grant comes from Krishna. For they get the grant from Krishna, and only then we get the wish granted. So we learned this with an example where when we pour water onto the leaves or the branches of the tree, that will not help the tree survive. So it is without pouring the water to the root, the tree won't flourish. So the root here is Krishna, and the leaves and the branches we refer to demigod. Similarly, we also learned the example from right way to feed, to nourish our body is through when we eat the food, and the energy is spread through the stomach. But if we just feed the food to one of the parts of the body, that will not nourish our our body. So yeah, Krishna is the root. And he clearly mentions that demigod worship would not be, it's not the right. Then just quickly moving to the last section, 26 to 34. This section describes the glory of Krishna, and it's very it very nicely mentions how doing bhakti is so simple. And from the shloka of 26, where Krishna highlights that he accepts just anything, as simple as a leaf, flower, fruit, or water. If it is offered with devotion, he accepts it. So bhakti as such is mentioned twice in here, to show that it is the only means we can approach Krishna and get that devotion service. So without the basic aspect of bhakti, nothing can please Krishna from anyone. So we should not take it casually. Then the last 3 to 4 shlokas, Krishna also mentions that whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever actions we perform, we have the mindset to do it as an offering to Krishna. In this way, if we do it as an offering to Krishna, we will be free from the bondage of the of the results, of whether it is auspicious or inauspicious results. So in this way, Krishna also declares later that because the section is the glories of bhakti, Krishna beautifully describes here that how he is equal to all, but he is specially inclined to his devotees. And even if a devotee is imperfect, they make some accidental mistakes or something, inherited mistakes as well. Krishna still forgives and purifies these imperfect devotees, because they are determined to do the devotion. So yeah, here Krishna is so merciful that we learned it with an example of how generously he supplies all the necessities of life, as basic as water or everything, just like without seeing the difference. So like a cloud pours the rain no matter where, even into the sea or onto the rocks where it is not needed. So Krishna really has provided everybody in this material world, irrespective of their whether they're devotees or non-devotees or miscreants, that basic necessity of life. So but he has a special corner for his devotees, like we would do. We also learned it from an example that we might do charity to n number of but we would have that extra corner for our own children. So that's the same with Krishna. So he has that special inclination towards his devotees. And even if a devotee performs any mistake, but if he's determined with Krishna consciousness, then Krishna also asks Arjuna specifically to declare further in the verses that his devotees will never perish. So as long as one is not perfect, but there may be accidental fall downs, but Krishna would still, even an imperfect devotee can attain the supreme destination. So that's what Krishna is highlighting here, and we are all at our own stages of bhakti. So it is so yeah, we should not look down for our spiritual advancement. We should, even if we do mistakes, we should still be determined to do the devotional service. So at the end, the last shloka, Krishna highlights that engaging our minds, always thinking about him, and becoming his devotee, offering obeisances to him, worshipping him, being completely absorbed in him, we will surely go back to Krishna.
Okay, good. Thanks. So does anyone has any question to Nikita? Okay, Nikita, do you have any question?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to, because while I was undergoing this, I had forgotten some of the steps of that progressive stages of bhakti. So maybe we can check if anybody remembers, what are these progressive stages of bhakti, and also the 9 steps of devotional service. And I think I mentioned it starting with Shraddha, which is faith. So I don't know if anybody can.
Okay, maybe you can just share.
That's fine, ma'am. Maybe I can say. So we had it started with Shraddha, Sadhu Sang, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhav, and Prem. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to the 10th chapter, and 10th chapter is titled as Opulence of the Absolute. Now in other spheres it is also known as Vibhuti Yoga, where Krishna talks about his opulences, which is also known as Vibhutis, right? Now 9th chapter, Krishna was specifically highlighting that what is the position of his devotee, what does he do, what how is he engaged, and he was just glorifying the devotional service, and he continues on to glorify the devotional services until the 11th verse of 10th chapter. If you see, like most of these chapters in Bhagavad Gita, they will start with a question from Arjun. But here, it is said that Krishna was in such an ecstasy that he just continued on glorifying about Bhakti Yoga, right? And he started that because you are my friend. Again, it is an important thing that he continues, and he highlights the qualification of a recipient of knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita can only be understood by a devotee. The essence of Bhagavad Gita can only be, and which is why he, in the first verse of 10th chapter, he says, just because you are my friend, I'll continue. I'll share something more confidential to you, right? And he says that, and then he contradicts and contrasts that in the second verse by saying that demigods or great sages, they cannot understand me. Right? Then who can understand? It's only my devotee. And he then says, how that he's source of all the qualities and all the personalities, right? Intelligence, knowledge, fear or fearlessness, right? Everything comes from him. The great personalities, the Saptarishis, the four Kumaras, Manus. He is the source of everything we see in this material world and in the spiritual world, right? And then comes what? The essence. The essence of what? Bhagavad Gita. And what is it? It starts with verse number 10.8. Aham sarvasya prabho mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. That, I am the source of all spiritual and material world. Everything has come from me. And the person who knows this perfectly, iti matva bhajante mam, he is engaged in devotional service with what? Buddha bhava, with his heart and with his brain, both. He will engage. And how does he do and what does he do? Having known the what Krishna is, he highlights it in 10.9. The symptoms of pure devotees. That Machchita madgat prana bodhayantas parasparam kathayantas chamam yantushanti charamanti cha. That, we discussed that how this particular verse talks about all the three most important limbs of devotional service, which starts with Shravanam, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam. Shravanam is bodhayantas parasparam. The devotees, they discuss my pastimes. Then Kirtanam kathayantas cha kathayantas cha mam nityam. That they always glorify me among themselves, right? And after, what happens with Shravanam and Kirtanam? Third thing is, if you always hear about Krishna, if you always speak about Krishna, by default you will always remember Krishna. Smaranam, Machchit Matgata Prana. That I'm always in their mind. I'm their life and soul. Right? So that is important, right? And after doing that, they enjoy, like they are in ecstasy. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. They are in ecstasy. And for devotees who are engaged in devotional service, like the way it is described here, how does Krishna reciprocate with them? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me, Tesham satata yuktana bhajatam priti, they are always engaged in priti purvakam. They are glorifying Krishna. What does Krishna do? What does Krishna give to them? Tadami buddhi yogam. That I give the knowledge by which they come to. By which they come to me. Yena mam upayanti te. Right? And furthermore, he continues his reciprocation to those devotees. What does he do? What does he say? Tesham, to them. Evanukampartham aham agyanajam tama nashyami atmavasto jnanena bhasvata. That I'm sitting in their heart, and from there I remove their ignorance. How do I remove? Gyan Deepena Bhasvata. By illuminating the lamp of knowledge from within their heart. Right? So the process is very clear that if we engage in devotional service, then will Krishna, give us the knowledge by which we can understand him, by which we can remember him, right? By which we can go back to him. So the importance is of this. And thereafter, Arjuna will continue to glorify him. He will acknowledge all what Krishna said. Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Anam Vibhu. Right? That, and then he says, Shya Sarve Devarishi Naras Tata Ashita Devalo Vyasa Swam Cheva Bravishi Mai. That you are pinnacle of everything. And people may doubt that Arjuna is saying because he is his friend, but Arjuna further authenticates that by giving references to Narad Muni, Asita Devala, and the compiler of the Vedas, who is Vyasdev. Right now, please try to understand. If you see, like in previous chapters, sometimes Arjuna would have doubts and questions, and he'll say, "Hey Krishna, how could you give this knowledge to Sun God, or how are you supreme, and all this?" But in this particular verse, he is sharing what he knew before the Gita was recited. He knew very well that Vyasa, Narada, Asita Devla, all these rishis, they acknowledge and accept Krishna is the absolute truth. So Arjun very well knew that Krishna, he is my friend, but he is absolute truth. He is Parabrahma. Right? So that is important for us to understand. Also Arjuna's position. Right? It is like he's not like one of us who would always get confused and no. So and then he also further says that I totally agree with what you have said, that no one can understand you, right? And then it seems goes into ecstasy and says, Krishna, please continue to talk about yourself. I want to know more about you. Your opulences, how can I always remember you? And I'm never tired of hearing about you. It's like Parikshit Maharaj, who for 7 days and night, like without having a drop of water, Parikshit Maharaj and Sukhdev Goswami were discussing and glorifying Krishna. And that discussion we have with us in form of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is just similar to that Arjuna continues. Arjuna says that I'm never tired of hearing. I just want to continuously hear about you. So please share about your opulences. And then Krishna says that, oh Arjun, why do you want to know about all this? It's not possible for me to share everything, all the opulences, because they are limitless, right? And then he said, I will share a few of them, the most important one. And then he highlights 82 of his opulences, starting with that, I am the super soul in everyone's heart, and I'm of the Rudras, I'm Shiva. Of the demigods, I'm Indra. Right? Of the Vedas, I am Samved. Of the sacrifices, I am chanting. Right? So he continues to highlight. What does this mean? This means basically he's saying that best of everything is represented by me, sort of like the best of everything uh, has that best because I am the source, right? When you see best of anything, always remember me. That best is best because I have given that opulence to that best person. So always remember Krishna whenever you look around, whenever you look, see anything great, that a particular person has got his opulence because Krishna has given that to him or her or to it, right? So that is where it is important. And then Krishna ends the chapter by saying that I have shared it's few of them, and it is just a spark of my splendor. Just by a single fragment of myself, I pervade the entire universe. Right? So that is how Krishna concludes the 10th chapter. So just want to check if anyone has any question or any comment. Okay, so we'll then move on to the 11th chapter. We still have maybe 15-20 minutes. So we'll move on to 11th chapter. Dr. Akshi, will you like to speak about 11th chapter?
Dr. Sumit, I have not read. I couldn't get time to read. मेरे को इस बार स्पेयर कर दीजिए. मैं नेक्स्ट टाइम फिर से इसको 10-15 मिनट्स में एक बार समराइज करूंगी.
Okay, sure.
For my well-being, I know that I have missed this opportunity, but due to circumstances, I couldn't do that. Read
No.
out.
So we will then move on to the 12th chapter. So Arpita Ben, will you like to share and speak or conduct the quiz today, or you also want to discuss it next time?
No, I can share the highlights of the chapter today, but I've also made a quiz.
Yeah.
If everyone is happy, we can just have the quiz done in maybe 5-7 minutes, and then I can go through the chapter again.
Okay. So whatever you want, like you want to go through the quiz first?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me try to open it. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so how many verses are there in chapter 12? 20, very good. So then what does verse 8 to 12 cover? Personalist versus impersonalist, progressive stages of bhakti, qualities that endear one to Lord Krishna.
Progressive stages of bhakti.
Yeah, we discussed that how Krishna starts with saying that someone who always remembers me and thinks about me is the best, and then he comes down. What are the three features of absolute truth?
Brahman, Paramatma, and Brahman.
Right. Which form is the highest spiritual realization? This time Arpita Ben has prepared an easy quiz for everyone.
200 forms.
Yeah, about one feature of the truth.
Personal.
But those who worship dash, giving up all their dash onto me and being dash onto me without deviation, engaged in this service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their upon me, ocean of Pritha. For them, I am the superior from the ocean of. Wow. As soon as I said it's an easy, like here comes that. Okay, so
Okay. But those who worship me are giving up all their activities onto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Partha. For them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death.
great. Thank you very much. It's nice. Which verse is it?
I think it's verse number 12 point. 12.6 and 7.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So progressive levels of bhakti match the following. Giving up result of your work, follow regulative. This is Abhyas Yogina. So this is the first, and work for Krishna. Work for Krishna. Okay. So verse 8 is what? Who will say?
I will.
Yeah.
Mind fixed on Krishna.
Right.
Hmm.
And then
Here
verse
is
9,
follow regulative principles.
Abhyas Yogina. And then 10,
Sloka 10 is work for Krishna.
Mhm.
No,
Mm.
giving
Yeah.
up.
Mhm. Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay,
Work
fourth, last one is giving up results of your work.
of your work. Yeah.
Very nice. This actually is very, very, very important for us, all of us, to understand, because we should not get stuck at lower levels. We should all aim to achieve this thing, because certainly we all start with giving up results for your work. All of us, almost all of us, are here at this stage. Also, we do something, we work something for Krishna. We go and do some seva in home or temple, right? We are also trying this Abhyas Yogina, trying to follow, trying to read, trying to study, trying to preach, right? Uh, but all this finally should conclude, at this, right? Okay, so does Smarana Bhakti means fixing your mind on Krishna?
Yes, true.
Okay. What are the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga? Now, please try to understand that when Krishna said these things, regulative principles of sadhana bhakti, these regulative principles are not those four regulative principles, right?
Hmm.
It has to be very clearly understood. Those four regulative principles cannot be compromised. These regulative principles which are highlighted in 12.9 are like hearing, studying, reading, worshipping,
Remembering.
all those 9 limbs of devotional services. Yeah. So yeah, and then one who is not dash but is a kind friend of all, uh,
I
all
think I'll
living.
just say it.
uh,
One who is not envious, but is a kind friend of all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from a false ego, who is equal in both happiness and in distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. It's Shloka 13 and 14, 12.13 and 12.14.
Okay, great. So I think so. This is good. Revision of the 12th chapter. So Arpita, when you will also like to little bit speak about it, right?
I can do that. So this shloka starts with Arjuna questioning Krishna, who is a better, is it a personalist or is an impersonalist, who is perfect? Then Krishna advises that those who's fix their mind on me in my personal form and is always engaged in worshipping me with faith and devotion is the most perfect. That's what he answers back to Arjuna. And then pure devotee always chants, hears, read books, cooks prasadam, does seva directly or indirectly, like going to the market, getting stuff for Krishna, or preparing prasadam, purchasing things, or even washing dishes and things like that in temple. So that's what seva they do, directly or indirectly. And it does not let a single moment pass without remembering Krishna. So such action is basically called that they are in full samadhi. That's what Krishna explains. Then he also explains that the impersonalist is the path that they follow is very troublesome. For common man, this is a very difficult path to follow. That's what he explains between 1 and 7. Then from 8 and 12, he explains about the progressive stages of bhakti. The first one is fixing your mind on Krishna, as we just discussed. Follow regulative principles of sadhana bhakti, work for Krishna, and giving up the results of your work. And then you fix your mind and your intelligence on Krishna. That is fixing your mind. Then follow regulative principles is basically you have to get up early in the morning, you have to take your bath, then you have to offer your prayers and chant about Krishna, collect flowers and offer it to your deity, cook food and have it only as a prasadam, then constantly hear, either hear about Krishna like Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. And one should perform this under the guidance of a spiritual master. That's what it's been said between 8 and 12. Then Krishna says that even though if you are unable to follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, then you can at least one should perform, one should start working for Krishna. If that is not, if you cannot follow the principles of bhakti, then at least start working for Krishna, which means that get involved, make any conscious effort to work towards Krishna consciousness, voluntary service for Krishna and things like that. You can start doing that. Even if you can't do that, then what you can do is you can give up your results of the work. If not fully, then at least some percentage, like providing help, charity, social service, community service. You can start getting involved in this, and eventually you will lead up to being a pure bhakt of Krishna Bhagwan. That's what it said. Then there is a hierarchy as well. First, engage yourself in cultivation of the knowledge. Then better than that is meditation. Better than meditation is a renunciation of the fruits of action. Then renunciation of fruits, once you do that, you can attain internal peace of mind. And it said that bhakti yoga is the most effective path. And with bhakti, we can become very dear to Krishna. Then it's explained what are the qualities of a pure devotee. That's what my last thing was in the quiz. So one who is not envious, is kind-hearted, he is free from all false ego, who is equal in happiness as well as in distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and irrespective of whatever stage of your mind you are in, you always have Krishna in your, you always treat him like, you always, what should I say, take his name or be devoted to him. That's who is a pure devotee. That's where it ends.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Arpita. Any questions for Arpita, man? Does anyone has any question? Okay, Arpita, man, do you have any question for others? Okay. So